Ed, we can't hear you.
Good morning. Welcome to our online worship service of Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. We will put the link in the chat. Whoever you are and wherever you have come from for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. My name is Ed Woods. I've been a Unitarian Universalist for about 50 years and a member of Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship since 1985. I am currently chair of Building and Grounds, and I will still be a member of the choir when we are able to sing as a group again. Our worship leader this morning is Reverend Sarah Schurr. Reverend Schurr is the congregational field consultant for the Pacific Western region of the Unitarian Universalist Association. It is a great honor to have Reverend Schurr in our pulpit today. I'd like to welcome any visitors. Please introduce yourselves in our chat box. Today, there will be no coffee hour after our worship service. Instead, there are several other events occurring in which you are encouraged to participate. After our worship service ends, the KUUF board will conduct a voting practice for KUUF members on this Zoom webinar. You're invited to stay to learn how we will be using Zoom polling to vote during our special congregational meeting next Sunday after our worship service. Reverend Schurr will stay with us for that practice, and when it is over, she will answer any questions members of the congregation have about settled ministry that they put into the chat. Also, after this worship service, the Children's Religious Exploration Program will host a children's Zoom time. That link will go into the chat at the end of the service for families who want to use it. And finally, our adult education program is hosting a Zoom class on myths of global warming and how it will affect our lives, taught by our own Rowan Braybrook. A link will go into the chat while Reverend Schurr is answering questions for those who want to join that class. A link for that class is also in the candle, should you need it. The announcements are available on our webpage, www.kuuf.org, or our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. We would like to start today by acknowledging that the land on which we all live is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, the S'Klallam, and the Skokomish people. They have lived in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea for thousands of years. These tribes still live here and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Now, please enjoy the choir and musicians of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Grafton and Upton singing "Building a New Way" for our call to worship.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We can feed on every need. Every need. We can feed on every need. Every need. We can feed on with love that is the seed. We can feed on every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, our world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. A new way. A new way. A new way.
Hopped up on sun, wading through water. My mouth is open with pants and beams of sun, of moon, of joy. This day is consecrated not in its making, but in its being lived. Make each day a holy one. Come, let us worship together.
Now please join me in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as we say these words. With faith to face our challenges, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing. Our opening hymn, Wake Now My Senses, was written by Thomas J. Michelson, a Unitarian Universalist minister on the East Coast. He wrote this hymn for the ordination and installation of a minister of religious education in the First Parish Church of Arlington, Massachusetts. It's called the Slane, and it is a traditional Irish melody. It is meant as a call to our own ministry for all Unitarian Universalists. Please join in singing our opening hymn, Wake Now My Senses, number 298 in our gray hymnal. The lyrics will appear on your screen.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words will appear on your screen. We gather as a caring community seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Now it is time for our morning offering. If you would like to donate electronically, please click on the paypal.me link in the chat. You may then email admin@kuuf.org to let us know if your donation is for 1, the KUUF General Fund, 2, the Minister's Discretionary Fund to help our members in need, or 3, our monthly charitable giving recipient for the month of January, Peninsula Community Health Services. If you don't indicate to which fund you want your contribution to go, it will go into our General Operations Fund. You may also send a check to the address on the screen. Please write in the memo line to which of the funds your offering should go. If this is your first time at KUUF, you are our guest, so there is no need to contribute. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us.
its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love.
We love to brag about the famous Unitarians and Universalists in our history. Oh, we talk about Julia Ward Howe, who wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. We talk about P.T. Barnum and his great circus. We talk about Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. So many great Unitarians and Universalists in our history, and several presidents of the United States. But there's one we don't talk about very often, and that's Millard Fillmore. Yes, Millard Fillmore was the 13th president of the United States, and he was one of the charter members of the Unitarian Church in Buffalo, New York. So he's a very active Unitarian and the 13th president of the United States. Now, as president, people have a lot of opportunity to do good things, to have a lot of influence to make the world a better place. And when Millard Fillmore was president, there was a lot going on in our country that was really important. One of the things was they were trying to decide, as a country, were we going to be a place where one human being could own another human being? Was slavery okay, or was slavery not okay? That was a big decision they were facing at that time. Millard Fillmore, as president, really could have made a big difference. But he kind of didn't want to go there. He thought it was more important that we all just get along. Let's not make any waves. He didn't want people to get upset. So Millard Fillmore, as president, passed the Fugitive Slave Law, which said that if a slave ran away from slavery in the South and went up north where they'd be safe, that the police could go get them, arrest them, and bring them back into slavery again. That was what Millard Fillmore, the Unitarian president, did with his great opportunity to serve the world. Now, the reason I tell you this is not because I want us all to be ashamed of Millard Fillmore, but to hold up the example that just being Unitarian is not good enough. Being a UU isn't good enough. We have to actually live our values. It's not just what we say we are as people of faith, it's what we actually do in the world that I think will be remembered for in generations to come. So that's where Millard Fillmore, one of our Unitarian presidents, provides us a cautionary tale. It's not enough just to be Unitarian. You actually have to live being a Unitarian. Thanks for listening.
Now is the time for our joys and sorrows. Though we are physically distanced from one another, our hearts and spirits remain connected. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to put it in the chat this morning. Lisa Johnson she is joyful because she's spending time with her beloved mother, Mavis Johnson, who is with us here this morning. Bonner says, much loving light sent to my first boyfriend, Jeffrey, who lost his husband to cancer on December 26th. Now his father yesterday. Bill and Terry Looney, thinking of all those suffering pain. Nathan Genevieve, I have joy and concern over Morgan starting in-person classes on Thursday. Jeff and Pam Helm, we were able to visit our granddaughters last weekend after quarantining. Love and light to Susan, Deborah, and Michael at the loss of their loved one. Suzanne, I'm enjoying my first service with KUF today. Marcy Mathis, sorrow for the loss of a friend, Carol Cohen, this last week. Chris Ambergy, such joy for many changes President Biden is making. Joey, my joy is that my friend is leaving an abusive relationship. Terry Mallory, welcome Mavis. Brian Watson, joy for the entry into force of the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, making nuclear weapons illegal. Joy that we may eliminate this danger to all life. Bonner, much joy for Reverend Jessica. She brings so much to our congregation. Ruth Powers, thanks, Tanisha. Thank you everyone for sharing. May you who shared this morning feel the love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. And for all those whose joy or sorrow is too tender to share, our hearts are with you. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen, and be blessed. Blessed be.
The first reading today is an excerpt from The Church Has Left the Building by Margaret Weiss. The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all the people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts. Gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache, and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We are sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreams. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Our second reading, Love is Our Greatest Purpose by J. Abernathy. We affirm that love is our greatest purpose. Accepting one another is the truest form of faithful living. The search for truth is our constant star. We pledge our hearts, minds, and hands to challenge injustice with courage, to find hope in times of fear, and to live out our Unitarian Universalist values every day as a beloved community. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all that is sacred in life. I'm delighted to get to be with you guys today here in Kitsap to talk about the call. To call a minister. Well, that means so many things, like, I have a great idea for a spring fundraiser. I think I'll call the minister and tell her all about it. Or, I just found out that my elderly mother has died. I need comfort, and I need to call my minister. She's there for me during tough times. Yes, that's one definition of calling a minister. That reaching out for voice-to-voice communications with your clergy person that you know and you trust. Then there's the Reverend Lon Roy call. a minister who was instrumental in the formation of this very congregation in Kitsap so many years ago. Your fellowship history tells us that the congregation began when Mary Lou DeSanta met with Reverend Call about his work for the Unitarian Association in Boston. Reverend Call was at the time the driving force in helping start new Unitarian fellowships all over the nation, including yours. At least 30% of our UU congregations today were part of that movement and owe some of their history to a minister named Call. And you often hear ministers talk about how they ended up going into this profession because they felt called or heard a call to ministry. This called to the ministry thing, what is it? Well, it's a real thing. It really is. It's interesting to ask ministers to tell you their call stories. For some of us, it's subtle and involves a gradual realization that this is the work for them. And for some, it's a more dramatic event where they are suddenly filled with religious insight about the purpose of their life and their life's mission. My own call story falls more in the dramatic category. I loved church and church work since I was a kid. But there was this one year in my late 30s, I found that every time I went to a worship service, I would burst into tears uncontrollably. It felt very real, like I needed to do something religious with my life. And that need was so strong, it was physically painful. Once I devoted myself to the work within our faith, the sobbing stopped, and I really felt like I was doing what I was meant to do. That pain and the need to devote myself to a life of serving our faith, that was my call to ministry. Now you might ask, who was doing the calling? Who was calling me? Well, that's complicated. When I say to people, I got a call from God to this work, I don't mean an old man with a white beard rang me up with a celestial telephone. No, not even close. But I do think that it was something greater than myself that I was pulled toward, beckoned by in some unexplainable way. So who or what was calling? Well, that's complicated and kind of confusing. But called to ministry, I was indeed. Many of us were. Yet I'm here today to talk with you about yet another kind of call in the ministry. Not the kind on the telephone or the kind that urges you to stop what you're doing and go to seminary. It's the one that defines a special kind of relationship between a minister and a congregation. It's the one that describes the difference between a contractual relationship and a covenantal one between minister and the people they serve. You good folks here in Kitsap, you've had called ministry before, so you might think you have this down, at least some of you. And maybe you do, some of you. But I also know that your history with called ministry in this congregation has had a few bumps in the road. Some years have been great. Some years were hard on everyone. And you might be a little shaken by those experiences in your relationship to call, and that might contribute to some stressful thoughts and feelings. And of course, many of you are new. Many of you have not had a called minister before. So rather than beginning with any faulty assumptions, I'll just start at the beginning. A called relationship is not required for someone to give you good ministry services. For instance, if you're in the hospital facing surgery and a chaplain comes by to talk with you, hold your hand, help you feel better, that chaplain may serve you very well, but they're not your called minister. I am an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister. I am your primary contact person from the Pacific Western region of the UUA. I'm here to help your congregation thrive. But I'm not your called minister either. There are a number of Unitarian Universalist congregations who have a senior minister who's called and an assistant minister who's hired to help out the senior minister. And there are many small congregations with part-time ministers who are not called, but it's a contract that binds them. And this is all real ministry and it all counts. I want you to know that. That's all, it's all counts. That's all real. And for the past several years here at Kitsap, you've been working with the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers. She is serving you right now as a contracted minister. She came to you early in her ministry career, and the amount of time you've contracted with her to serve has grown with your needs and your faith in her. And Reverend Jessica has served you during this really strange time in history. Who would have predicted that you would see a time when all our worship services, meetings, and even pastoral care would be done remotely because of a world pandemic? I certainly didn't see this coming. But she has served you with love in this strange, new, and challenging medium. And in this time and historic change in our efforts to combat white supremacy culture, we're working so hard to build a true, fair, and equitable world. And the resistance to that work we're trying to do is real and something we have to deal with as people of faith. I read an article in the Seattle Times about the white supremacist who took over the Grange in your nearby Whidbey Island. As a fellowship, you have a lot going on and a lot of work you can be doing. This year, you want to reassess your relationship that you have with your minister. You and the Reverend Jessica have been doing some really good work together. You trust each other. And you may feel like this is a minister you can partner with for a long and fruitful relationship. You may want to move from contracted ministry to called ministry, also referred to as settled ministry. And I believe that's what you've been discussing in your congregation for the last several months. What would that be like? Is that something you would like to do? Is that something that you see as the best choice for your congregation? Now, the idea of called ministry is old in our tradition. In this context, it really is clear who's doing the calling, too. This is not a fuzzy one. It is the Unitarian Universalist congregation, and the call happens by a vote of the membership. My husband's family is filled with Methodist ministers, and they tell old family stories about how every year they would go to their annual Methodist conference, I guess sort of like General Assembly, and each minister would meet with the bishop, and the bishop would tell them where they were going to be working the next year. Lay leaders, like members of the board, they would also go to these conferences, and they would hear who their minister was going to be in the coming year. It was at this big event in the conference called the Reading of the Appointments, where a public announcement was made of who was getting what minister. Boom, that was it. The minister and the congregation could offer their preferences to the bishop ahead of time, but the decision was with the denomination rather than with the congregation. That's the system my husband's family knew and understood. But Unitarians, Universalists, Congregationalists, along with Baptists and Reform Jews, we have a different system. We have a system called congregational polity. You might think that's some radical thing from the 1960s, but no, it's a very old system dating back to the 1600s. And it's not just ours as you use, as I said, others have it too. Congregational polity means that there's no human authority in matters of church membership or leadership that is greater than that of a vote of the congregation. Now, it does not mean there's no greater authority than any one member. People sometimes get mixed up about that and think congregational polity means that no one's in charge and we can all just do whatever we want. That's a serious misunderstanding. But congregational polity does mean that when a congregation votes on something as a body, be it changing the bylaws or calling a minister, there is no greater agency that can override that decision. The congregational vote is a powerful thing indeed. What allows congregational polity to work well for the good of the congregation is the idea of being in covenant as a congregation. The great and wise Unitarian scholar, the Reverend Alice Blair Wesley, listed some qualities of our free covenantal churches who have congregational polity. She said these groups are where the spirit of love will reign in our lives. They are self-governing and free from outside control. She said they have a loyalty to the spirit of love that commits members to the best understanding of truth that can be obtained by reason. And she said, and I'm quoting here, ultimately, the only freedom adequate to human dignity is the freedom to do what love asks of us. And the greatest blessings of life come to us and through us to all the world when, with intimate and freely bonded companions, we are trying together to live with the integrity of faithful love. Yes, indeed, a UU church is not all about me. It's all about love and commitment. So when you have a contracted minister, like you do now, the minister has an agreement with the board. The congregation may affirm that agreement if the board wishes, but the agreement is with the board. The time of service is specific. I was the consulting minister at the West Hills congregation in Portland for many years. I had a typical one-year contract with the option to renew every year. But in these contracted situations, it is a time-limited situation, and the accountability is to the governing body. The minister may serve many people very well, preaching, comforting the sick, teaching, but the service is based on a temporary relationship with the board. Your board has developed this agreement with the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers. It's time-limited and with the intention of doing specific tasks. When a minister is called by the congregation to serve as their settled minister, they are called by a vote of the congregation. There may be a search committee who selects the final candidate, but it's the congregation that makes the actual call to choose that particular human being, that particular minister, out of all the other people available in the world to serve that congregation in a sacred and covenantal relationship of called ministry. In a case like yours, where you're considering calling your contracted minister who you already know so well, there's a committee that coordinates various kinds of discussions and dialogues to see if this ministry relationship should be considered for call in that congregation before there is a vote. I understand your congregation has been doing that work for several months now, and you're ready to vote next week. Again, the call is a way of saying, we people of this congregation call you out from all those others to serve as our very own minister in covenant. Now, lest you think this is a one-way street, I have to tell you it's not. No one in the UUA will tell a minister where they're going to serve next year. Ministers who are interested will seek out which congregations are looking to offer calls and will declare themselves ready and willing to be called by congregations they feel good about. In your case, it's not just you wondering if Reverend Jessica is a good call for you. She has to decide whether she wants to be called by you. It's a two-way street. So what kind of relationship are ministers and congregations being called into? How is this different from a regular hired professional employee kind of situation? You might have heard ministers are never hired, they're only called. Well, actually, we do hire ministers sometimes. I've been hired by the UUA. Contracted ministers are hired by the board. But a called relationship is way less legalistic. It's less about how many hours you work per week and more about the quality of relationship you build. It's less about who reports to who and more about sharing the mission and working together to make that mission manifest in the world. In short, the called minister and the congregation have a covenantal relationship with each other. We all talk about this a lot, the idea of the covenant in a UU congregation. A covenant is not like it's kind of like a contract, but it's also got a non-human third participant. A covenant is an agreement between two parties that's made in conjunction with something more important than anyone at the table. In marriage, for instance, we pledge to respect and care for each other, but we also commit ourselves to the whole concept of love and marriage itself, promising to always keep that commitment at the center. When we decide to have children, we make a tacit agreement to feed them and teach them and care for them. But infused in this relationship is your promise to the future, to send this new person forth into a future past a place where you can go yourself. So it's not just about you and your needs. It's about creating people who will do the work of tomorrow. These are both examples of covenants that you might be familiar with. When a minister and a congregation are in covenant with each other, no one punches a time clock. However, there are value-based overlays that impact how the ministry is done. The minister pledges that they're there for you, to care for people in good times and bad. And yes, we do sometimes have to answer the phone in the middle of the night. And we've even been known to go sit in emergency rooms in the hospital with you. And the congregation wants to care for the minister and help create systems where the minister gets plenty of time off for relaxing vacations, holidays with family, and time for spiritual retreats. And the minister expects the members to respect their privacy and the need for distance sometimes. So yes, there are mutual expectations and an overlay of healthy care and support between each other. In the covenant of called ministry, no one in the church supervises the minister. Yes, no one is the minister's boss. The congregation may have all voted to call this minister, but really, it does not mean the minister has as many supervisors as there are members. Oh, that would be frustrating to say the least. In some ways, this would be like the old biblical covenants. The minister is ultimately accountable to that force which called them to the profession of ministry in the first place. I once actually heard a Unitarian Universalist minister say from her pulpit, "I may work at this church, but I work for God." For those of you who might have trouble with those words, let me put it another way. Your church has a mission, and the minister will do their very best to help your congregation fulfill its mission. They will work with you in this important task in the covenant of shared ministry. Together, you'll be working for the greater good always. You will trust your called minister to do their very best work in partnership with you and not disregard the important work of your very important relationship you have with each other. As Alice Blair Wesley said in her statements about the nature of UU congregations, this covenant is a relationship between the minister, the congregation, and the spirit of love which binds them to their good work to serve the world. And remember that your congregation is also in covenant with the UUA. If you or your minister need help now or in the future, we are here. We want you to thrive. And if you need tools or classes or consultants to help you do that, we'll do what we can to help meet your needs. And we'll walk beside you because we're all in covenant to live out our UU faith together and to build a better world. As we sang in our hymn this morning, mingle my calling with all who will share, work toward a planet transformed by our care. So if you vote to call the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers to be your settled minister, what will change? Well, she's already your minister after all. You might be saying, well, she already listens to me if I need to talk about something important. Well, she's already helping our congregation serve the greater good. Well, I believe the relationship will change a little bit. It would change from something temporary to something long-term. Now, I'm not saying a lifetime commitment because I hope she will retire someday. And in truth, you are getting this minister at the beginning of her ministry career, and she's very good. She might want to move on to new and different professional challenges at some point with another congregation. And then you can brag that she was once your minister. But in a successful called ministry, you anticipate a longish-term relationship. Long-term enough that you'll have to work overtime to address conflicts as they come up, because they always do. If you're communicating, you will occasionally disagree. That's just how it goes. But in a good called ministry, disagreeing is not the end of a relationship, but just the subject in a discussion that calls on your commitment to each other and to the greater good. Working through that possible conflict that will come up, and they always do, is part of how you live into your covenant. Calling a minister. It is one of the most powerful and important things you can do as a congregation. It's inviting one person out of all of those out there to be in a unique relationship with your congregation, where you join forces with the spirit of love and life to strive together to make the world a better place. It's not something to be rushed into. It's not a good time to settle for a bad match. A good and successful called ministry takes a lot of investment on the part of the minister and a lot of investment on the part of the congregation. But when it works well, and miraculously it so often does, it is a great and transformative power of healing in the world. Yes, a good called ministry relationship is a great and transformative power for healing in the world. And heaven knows we need more of that. May it be so, my friends.
I invite you now to set an intention and choose your word for the week ahead. You can choose one word or 2 words or even 3 words. And if you feel called to, put them in the chat. I will read them aloud. Bonner, send light and love. Joey, support and counsel. Bonner, heal. Lisa Johnson, trust. Nathan, Genevieve, and Morgan. Genevieve says, I am enough. KUUF, vote. Jerry Butler, move into fear with love. Hobie, commitment. Bill and Terry, open. Marcia, wonder and support. Aaron Burrows, longevity. Judith White Crow, forgive. Suzanne, patience and purpose. Joe Walter, openness. Melinda Hughes, understanding. Margaret Wilder, trust, love, respect. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your intentions. Our closing hymn, We'll Build a Land, is performed by Brian Kenny and Alina Hemingway. I hope you will sing along.
peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Good people of Kitsap, go forth into the world living our Unitarian Universalist values and join together with your congregation to live deeply into your covenant and create a better world for all. May it be so, and amen.
Hello, everyone. We're waiting for Lisa to join us. Lisa Johnson is the co-chair of our board, and she was supposed to be able to join us right now, and I'm guessing there are technical difficulties. So while we wait for Lisa to join this, I would like to, I see that she is on someone else's computer, so Tanisha is going to make her a panelist in just a second. While that's happening, you could be thinking of questions you might have about settled ministry that Reverend Schurr could answer for us after we do the practicing of voting, which is what Lisa will be leading us through. She's coming in under the name of Mavis Johnson, which is her mother. But in the meantime, until that happens, be thinking of what your question might be, and you can put it in the chat, and either Lisa or Reverend Schurr will answer it after we practice voting. Thank you. Lisa, will you be joining us soon?
Hello, good people. I've got a few more words for you, things that Lisa was going to say to you. The link for the children's Zoom time will go into the chat. You'll find it soon. If your family wants to join, you can be able to click on that link. Everyone else is invited to stay here in this Zoom area, and the KUUF board will hold an instruction and practice for the voting next week, the really important voting. So all members will be able to do so during the special congregational meeting that follows your worship next Sunday. After you finish the practice voting, I will stick around with Lisa and answer questions about settled ministry that get put into the chat. And when we're all finished with that, you're all invited to an adult education class too hot to handle about global warming and how it impacts our future. The link to that class will also be shared at the end of our Zoom webinar. And I see Lisa is here.
Lisa, it's your turn and we can't hear you.
Morning, and thank you for staying for our webinar coffee hour. And the purpose of this is to demonstrate for everyone how the vote next week, January 31st, will work when we decide whether or not to call Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers as our settled minister. So I'd just like to say at the outset that if you have any problems with voting, and I'm going to be demonstrating how to do that in just a moment, please make sure you either email Tanisha at admin@kuf.org or use the chat feature and send a description of your problem to her and your vote, because it will count. But hopefully we'll make this poll feature work. That's why we're doing it on webinar, and it's already easier for us because nobody had to sign out and then sign into the coffee hour and get lost along the way. So that's a good sign. So first of all, the meeting on the 31st will not be a meeting for a lot of discussion. We trust that over the last many months that we've been looking at this question, in the Settled Ministry Task Force and conversations with the board and neighborhood groups have had discussion time. Hopefully all your questions have been able to be asked and have gotten an answer. So please let me know before next Sunday if you have questions that have not been answered, and I will get back in contact with you. So you're going to see the poll in just a moment, and it is one question that is repeated 3 times. In fact, I'm going to ask right now for Tanisha to open up the poll so you can see it. Don't vote yet, but here's the poll. So first of all, you see member number 1. For those of you who have only one person on your device watching today, you're only going to answer question number 1. And here's the question. Do you believe Sasquatch live in Washington state? Yes, no, or abstain. And then skip. I'll explain what that's there for in just a minute. So member number 1, would you please vote in answer to that question right now? Do you believe Sasquatch live in Washington state? So now, member number 1, you're finished. And if there's a second member in your household, that person will answer question number 2. Same question. Do you believe Sasquatch live in Washington state? Now, if there is not a member number 2 in your household, you're going to click skip. And then the third question is, once again, for the third member in your household, do you believe Sasquatch live in Washington state? And if there is no third member in your household, please click on skip. When that's done, go ahead and push submit. And soon we will see the answer to the questions. How KUUF members feel about Sasquatch in Washington State. Go ahead and share the results, please, Tanisha.
If everyone is done voting, I'm going to go ahead and close the polling. You have 10 seconds.
Wow. Look at that. 100% of our members believe in Sasquatch. Well, that's going to make the Sasquatch around very happy. Thank you. So that's all there is to it. If somehow you were not able to record your vote, please put it in the chat and send that to Tanisha, and it will be included. Now, our bylaws call for a written ballot in calling a minister, and because we can publish or we can print the results of this poll, we will have that written ballot along with any of the paper ballots that have come in as for people who requested them. So that's how it will work. I hope you found that easy, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Thank you.
Lisa, will you be coming on in real time now? Well, I'm not sure why we have Lisa isn't joining us, but I will substitute for her probably fairly poorly in a pinch here, and invite you once again to put your questions that you might have for Reverend Schurr or for me as the chair of the Settled Ministry Task Force into the chat. If you want to send a question you want everyone to see, you need to click and make it to all panelists and attendees. But if you don't know how to do that, that's okay, because I will read the questions that come in, if any. Some of you may have gotten confused by the poll results because it didn't look like 100% of people thought that Sasquatch lived in Washington State, but Lisa's remarks were pre-recorded and she actually didn't know how we would all vote on Sasquatch.
That's because he lives in Oregon.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, Lisa says she's going to come on as a panelist now. Ted Johnsrud says he is confused. Do you, Ted, if you need to talk to, wait a minute. Ted, if you need to talk to someone about voting and using the poll, I'd be glad to be available to help you. Or Tanisha, I'm sure, would be also. So give us a call this week. Lena said, was the ballot supposed to be disappear from the screen when you pressed submit? Tanisha, you'll have to answer that question.
Yes, it should disappear after you hit submit.
All right. Oh, here's a good long one. Max says, I am on the Settled Minister Task Force and have a technical question. We have been having trouble at times with the Zoom and with members participating via Zoom. If our settled and special congregational meeting next Sunday has a Zoom fail or a quorum of 90% or or a quorum or 90% call vote is not achieved due to technical issues, what happens next? I would hope the entire discernment process does not need to be redone. And we can
Hi,
just
Joe.
Tanisha, can you, thank you. I would hope the entire discernment process does not need to be redone and that we can just do more tech prep and reschedule another special congregational meeting. I know we are in new territory with a virtual special congregational meeting and voting. Any thoughts? I'm gonna turn that over to Lisa. Are you able to join us audibly, Lisa? I'm sure, Mac, that the board will work through the technical issues well enough that we're going to have a successful vote next week. But should our technology just not be sufficient? Okay. If it's not sufficient, we'll give it another go without having to go through the whole entire thing. Lisa says she's not a panelist, so she can't come in. I think Tanisha can fix that. Melinda asks, will the results of next week's vote be shared during the meeting? Tanisha, I think that's true, is it not?
That is true. We will share them at the meeting.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion there?
Yes.
That assuming it all goes really well, that's great. If for some reason there's like half the congregation wants to call Reverend Jessica and half doesn't, you might want to tell Reverend Jessica that privately before she sees it on the screen in front of everyone.
My understanding is that Reverend Jessica is going to leave after she delivers our service, and then members of the board are tasked with texting her to let her know, hopefully a huge whoopee, you know. But I don't know, because that was so confusing and I don't know what happened through my computer here. But would you like to try again? Could people put into the chat room yes, if they would like to, because we could try it again and do it right. I see a yes there. Oh, there's a no. So if you would not like to watch it again, I'm seeing a lot of yeses here. So you can leave if you're not willing to go through it again. But I would feel better being able to share what I wanted to share with you this morning if we tried it again. And I wanted to start, Reverend Sarah, for thanking you so much for your clarity, your history, and your insight. My heart, besides being terrified that something technical is going to go wrong next week, my heart is full with the task that we have in front of us.
And what I can reassure you about is that when COVID hit and we all had to do these crazy things online, congregations all over the UUA were just terrified. How are we going to vote for our new board of directors? How are we going to vote on our budget? Oh my gosh, how are we going to hold our annual congregational meeting? And what's amazing is it's usually gone really well. The number of times that the technology has gotten in the way is just really tiny.
Well,
generally it's going fine most places.
And I know we have a full congregation that is putting all their faith in our technology, and wonderful Tanisha to help us through it. So I see a lot of yeses in the chat that say, let's go for it again. So I'd like to start again, if that's okay.
Are you going to do the video again, or are you just going to why don't you just pull up a survey and just do it in real time?
I think we should pull up the survey again so that I'm not saying afterwards that 100% voted for it.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much. And thank you for staying through this Zoom webinar. And I'm representing the KUUF board here. And I want to make sure, and my heart is still racing, that people do feel confident that this vote can happen. And so after you're finished practicing again, we can answer any questions about settled ministry that you might have. You'll see in the chat that the members of the Settled Ministry Task Force who have worked so hard on this, they're listed there in the chat. So I want to say that we chose webinar polling because it's a lot easier than voting in the chat and having to count through all of those. So when things go well, it's super easy. So once again, I just want you to know, first of all, that the intent of next week's meeting is not to have discussion on whether or not to call Reverend Jessica. We've been working with that question through the Settled Ministries Task Force's work and discussions with the congregation, conversations with the board, independent conversations with members, and we hope that your questions have been able to be raised and answered, but if you still have questions, please contact me or members of the task force there. And I see the question, those requesting a paper ballot, what is the cutoff date to receive one? Because the mail has been pretty slow, the cutoff date, we had asked that people mail those ballots by yesterday. Or sorry, Friday. But if you, during the meeting, you have not been able to vote using the poll, we'll ask you to change on where it says 2 down below, that blue box, change that to Tanisha Smith. And then you can register your vote via chat. It will still be private and it will still be a part of our KUF archives for the future. So we can still have a paper record of the balloting. So Tanisha, would you mind putting the poll back up again? Here it is. And I noticed, on this first page for question number 2, we don't see skip. It really is there, and we'll work with the layout so that you can see it. But
you just have to roll down your cursor down the screen.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, thank you, Beth. So once again, if there's only one person on your device, please answer that question however you would like to, yes, no, or abstain. So then next, if there's a second member in your household, this is your turn. Please answer that question about the Sasquatch, yes, no, or abstain. And if you're the only person on your device, now's the time to click skip. And so if there is a third member within your household, once again, please respond to the question. If there's no third member, now's the time to click skip. And when that's done, please click on submit. Okay, I have a question there from Sharon. It says, didn't work again for me. Is that the poll that didn't work for you, Sharon? Okay, so if that were to happen next Sunday, what we would ask you to do is put your vote, yes, no, or abstain, into the chat, and then make sure that you change who it's going to be only Tanisha. Okay, so that submit, and this is for Ted. That submit button, you have to scroll down a little farther and you should find that submit button. Did that work for you this time?
They have to answer every single question with either a vote or a skip in order to get the submit to be activated.
Okay, thank you, Beth. And again, you may have to scroll to the bottom to get the skip and or the final submit. We need that submit. So I'm hoping, Lena, that it worked for you this time. And thank you, Ed, for your help there in the chat. Good. I see that it worked for Lena. Well, I hope, and so Tanisha, could you now reveal what the response to Sasquatch in Washington could be, is? Oh, wow. So the news this time for Sasquatch is not nearly as clear as it was when I was the only one voting on it. Um, so, but you'll see, and it looks like we do not have very many three-member households there when you look at question number 3. We do have some abstentions. And so we would not make the 90% threshold that our bylaws say we need to have on the vote if we were voting on Sasquatches in Washington. But next week, the only question will be, are you in favor of calling Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers to be settled minister with Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship? That's the only question. So I hope that your hearts are beating a little bit less hard. I don't know what happened, why there was problems. My computer just blanked out at the last verse of that wonderful last song, and I couldn't get back. So, okay. Now's a great time to raise any questions you might have for Reverend Sarah or for us. And we've got Beth here who can also help answer. Was the chair of the Settled Ministry Task Force. We have our wonderful Reverend Sarah here, and I can answer whatever I might know. Bonner, in answer to your question there, yes, when we made that video, I think I was the only one voting. Tanisha might have been voting on another device as well, in which case she and I both were in agreement. So that was what that 99% referred to. So I hope everyone is clear on the multiple people in a household on one device. And if within your household you have more than one person using the computer, but on different devices, each of those people will just be acting as if they were the only person on that device and clicking skip on questions 2 and 3. Okay, question for Reverend Sarah. Jessica Demick. Now, no one can hear you. Can you type it into the chat?
She did, and the question is, does the UUA have any information to share about settled ministry that would be similar to what was shared in the sermon? Can't find it, but I know it's in there.
Well, we have an official manual for how to go from contract to call, which when your board and other leadership began this journey, I sent that to your board. So I believe you guys have been using that material. So we actually have a whole little guidebook about going from contract to call, which your congregational leadership has a copy of. So yeah, we do have some information, and I gave it to them. And my guess is that none of it's secret, and you can ask any of them what the little booklet says. In fact, it's probably available on the web. So that's in terms of other information. There's a kind of a process and a history. Are there any particular questions you had between about what I didn't mention today that might be in the manual?
Jessica has typed in that she's on a device that's hard to type on, so she may not send long messages to us.
Jessica, if you want to email me or Beth, or we can even forward it on to Reverend Sarah, we'd be happy to send that in for you. I see some other questions here. So first, Sue Matten. So Sue, if you and Jim are on that same device, then one of you will respond as member number 1, and the other one will respond as member number 2, and then you'll have to be sure to click the skip for question number 3. I hope that's clear to you. Please let me know if that makes sense to you. And then Marcy has a really good question. Thank you for asking this, Marcy. How will you establish the quorum if some devices represent more than one member? So during the service next week, we have board members who have a list of all members and next to them, and they'll be going down the participants list. If right now I see there are 42 people in our group right now, but if you click on that and then click on attendees, you'll see who all is there. And so 2 board members will be going down their membership list, independent from one another, and counting, checking off who is here, and then they'll confer with each other and reach agreement on what that number is. We need, our bylaws say we have to have 50% of our total membership present to vote, to hold this vote. And of that 50%, we need a 90% majority. So we know, and Tanisha knows who might be 2-member households looking at this list. And then of course, the vote will be reconciled later by Tanisha to make sure that everyone who voted was indeed a member. So my understanding is that we will see a result next Sunday. It'll have to be, just like any vote, it'll have to be, what's the word that you use for it? It'll have to be verified. But hopefully we will be there and know, and we can celebrate.
Can I address Bonner's question?
Yes, please.
What if we don't get a 90% threshold? It was the first and highest task of the Settled Ministry Task Force to determine if the congregation was ready to call Reverend Jessica, meaning that we felt that there was a 90% support for Reverend Jessica to be our settled minister. And that was the biggest piece of what work we did, was to find out from every member and ask every member to tell us what their thoughts were on this, so that we could get a real good, strong feeling about if we held the vote, would it pass? And we did not encounter a single person who did not anticipate voting yes. We fully expect it to pass with well over 90%. The only concerns that people voiced were financial, and in truth, the salary and benefits that would be paid to Reverend Jessica once she is called are no different than what we are currently paying her. So there's no financial impact. And that was the only concern that people expressed. And other than that, it was overwhelmingly wonderful response to our question, are you ready to call? Do you think we ought to call Reverend Jessica? So Bonner, I can't even imagine that it wouldn't be a 90%.
And I should also say that neighborhood group leaders are committed to checking on their neighborhood group members and maybe giving a call during the service if they're not on. Now I see there are a couple questions asking or mentioning that the participants are not all listed for attendees to see. When you click on participants, there's 2 tabs at the very top. Right now, there's 5 panelists. And then if I click on attendees, of which there are 35, I click on that, and then I see the list of attendees. So Melinda.
I'm not sure that function works for participants.
Well, Reverend Jessica said that she had turned that on in webinar. So we'll have to double check that to make sure that is enabled, and we will certainly do that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Ellie and Melinda, if you could just let me know if you found that participants tab and could click on it. Not there. Okay, not on your screen. Okay, so we will double check that and we will make our quorum counters from the board panelists. Well, they will be, all the board will be panelists for next week anyway, so they will have access to all of the members who are signed in. Okay, so that was a question for a lot of people. Hopefully you guys will all be able to see who all is here, because we can't we can't have the kind of celebratory meeting that we would love to have when people are in person. But I want to assure everyone that we will have a great big party when we can meet together, maybe outside. And when it comes time to install Reverend Jessica, we will all be able to celebrate together. Okay, so yeah, that does not seem to have been enabled so that attendees can see. Hopefully we can change that. I'm seeing jazz hands. Are there other questions? And has the link for adult RE been posted into the chat so that people who want to attend that? I really want to give people a shout out to go to that. Jill and Rowan are waiting patiently because this has taken a lot more time than we expected to. Oh, okay. Now the chat, the link to adult RE is there. So great. Thank you.
And thanks so much for letting me be with you today. This is a
Oh.
really important time in your congregation. I wish you nothing but the best with this vote next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Schurr. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Can we leave that chat up for a little while? Oh man, I do not know what happened. I was so calm and so ready for this. And then once my screen went blank, I started it up, it was plugged in. And then I wasn't a panelist, so I don't know why that went wrong. Maybe we can do some troubleshooting about, maybe I should just not be a panelist for next week, because I swear that I am technologically cursed. Mike Chalice, are you asking us to put out the chalice?
That happened.
Okay. I don't understand your question, Mike.
We still have 23 participants, Lisa.
I know. If you have questions, then please ask them. Maybe you're just liking looking at us. How many do we need to establish a quorum? 70 members. Members, not households. We had 90, I saw, I think 92 participants earlier today, and I didn't check how many of those people are members. Thank you, Ted. I know. We'll make this work next week.
Melinda, we did see your note that you were not able to call up Tanisha on the chat too. If it turns out for some reason there's a technical glitch next week, if you can't find Tanisha's name, and she would be designated as host, if you can't find it when you click on that, you can send it just to the panelists, and that would be the board members. And so you wouldn't have a totally confidential vote, but you would have a mostly confidential vote. The alternative would be to email Tanisha if you wanted. If all else fails, you can email Tanisha. It wouldn't show up in the poll, but she'd have a record of your vote.
And if we had a record of your being here, you would also be counted in the quorum.
Correct. Bonner asks, will the polling results be shown to us all like they were today? Reverend Schurr recommended that if the vote is positive, that's a perfectly good thing to share with everyone, but really the results need to be also shared almost simultaneously, if especially if it's not positive, with Reverend Jessica first. So I'm not sure how the board is going to manage that, but it would be, everybody is wanting to see the vote results as soon as possible.
Yes. Oh, okay. Ted's question. That's a good one. Why confidential doesn't happen in our in-person meetings over the past many years in the past? Actually, I don't think that's true, Ted, because we've always used paper ballots in the past, and then those are submitted only to the administrator, possibly a couple of board members as the official vote counters. Also, we don't want to, I mean, there may be people who vote no for whatever their reasons are, and we don't really want to make them targets if this doesn't go well.
It will go well.
It will go well. It will go well.
But if someone votes no and it still goes well, which is entirely possible, there might be one or two people who vote no, and we still don't want to out them. They
Right.
have a right to privacy.
Exactly. Thank you, Melinda. Paper balloting at ACM. Explain, Banner. ACM, Bonner. My brain is going.
I just put the adult RE link back in
Great.
for people because it's kind of scrolled off my screen now.
And our members are slowly fading away here. We're down to 16 now. Thank you for hanging in there. Oh, of course. My husband, Mac, just said annual congregation meeting. Yes, paper ballots we've always used.
Especially on voting for officers,
Mhm.
board members. I thought Reverend Schurr's sermon was really helpful.
I did too. I didn't know that about Millard Fillmore.
No.
and so much of, she also knows us as a congregation. It was clear. So
Mhm.
we are so fortunate that we've been able to work with Reverend Jessica for 2 years, and we're not calling a stranger. We're calling someone we know and love and who loves us.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I see that Mac just read up on Millard Fillmore during the service, so I guess he'll probably tell me all about him in a little while.
I think someone mentioned there's a book about him, a children's book,
Okay.
but I don't know if it has to do with the topic that was shared with us.
I didn't know we had UU ministers in the past in our country.
Several.
Yes, thank you, Terry. It was stressful, and I slept well last night. I didn't wake up at 3 with everything that could go wrong running through my brain, and I was sure that everything was going to go great. And then, boom, my screen goes blank.
We knew you were doing your best to get here, so I just sort of jumped into the breach.
Thank you for doing so well with that. And thank you, Tanisha, for being able to roll with it. Okay.
No, we might be done.
Yeah, lucky 13. Well, if we are, I think I am going to check into the adult RE.
I'll
and
put it in the
start breathing.
chat.
It's still there, so thank you.
Here it is again.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Terry, for your words of encouragement. And maybe we'll see you at ARE. It is not probably as cheery as our topic today, but Jill, knowing Jill and Rowan, it's going to have some humor in it as well.
Tanisha, when you are ready to end the worship service Zoom meeting, that's just fine.